Wow. Well, thanks everybody, especially for wearing a mask tonight. A lot of people I know have gotten COVID lately, even though it seems like they're careful. So I'm glad you're being careful. So tonight, our first speaker is Kait Rhoads. She was born in Virginia. Her family lived in the Caribbean in a boat for between the ages of 5 and 12. Kait received her scuba certification at the age of 10 on St. Thomas, United States Virgin Islands. Is that what USVI stands for? Kait preferred to be underwater instead of on land. Can you hear me? Okay. It's not perfect, okay. How about that? Her love for fibers began with her grandmother's sewing education, macrame nautical knot tying, and studying costume at the theater department of Rollins College, Florida, where she got a BA in art in 1989. She received a BFA Rhode Island School of Design in glass in 1993. She first started to visit the Pacific Northwest to be at Pilchuck Glass School around 1990. After graduating in 93, she moved to the Pacific Northwest and worked in glass in Seattle with artists including Sonia Blomdahl for 6 years before returning to the East Coast to graduate school at Alfred University, where she received her MA in 2001. MFA, we lost the F in that somehow. In 2001 and 2002, she's had a Fulbright scholarship in Italy studying sculpture at Murano. In 2007, she completed her yoga teacher training in Bali.
Sounds like fun.
I'm just getting the sound good.
Thank you. Good thing we've got a sound man. Let's see, in Bali, Indonesia. Afterwards, she taught yoga from 2007 to 2017 in Seattle at the Hatha Yoga Center run by Bob Smith and Key McGraw. Kait was a sabbatical replacement for half a year at the U of Hawaii, Manoa, in 2011. Soon after that, she became a volunteer at the Seattle Aquarium for 6 years until COVID. Kait observed the growth rhythms of local kelp in the aquarium dome tank and discussed microscopic plankton samples with the public. Kait began working with the Hilltop artists on a project and continues to collaborate with them and Citizens for a Healthy Bay, currently the Tacoma Creates project called Fused Together. Kait?
That one's yours. Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see all of you all. As Lynn was saying, I really... I really liked volunteering at the aquarium, and one of my favorite things to do was plankton toes. And I love not zooplankton, which is animal, but I really like the phytoplankton. So these are diatoms, and so they're tiny one-celled plants or organisms, algae, with skeletons made out of glass. So I really like those. And this is microscopic. So yep, I grew up in the Bahamas and the Virgin Islands. I was very lucky. And this is me sort of at the age of 10, 100 feet deep. And then carnival that we had down the islands. But for sure, one of my jobs on the boat was to do decorative knot tying, not so much like the framed picture, but more like the railing. And I did a lot of fibers, but what I really loved was just being underwater and sort of like looking into the water, and the light in the water was really exciting. So one of my first big pieces that I made out here is this blue dome piece, and it was at the Museum of Glass back in 2016, I think. But I finished it in 1995. It was one of the first pieces I made coming out here to Pilchuck for Emerging Artists in Residence in 1994. It's all industrial plate glass, drilled, woven together with binding wire, and you can fit a person. It fits me inside of it, but you know, I made it in the 90s, but since it was shown in the 2016 or so, I could collect all these selfies that people would post online, so it was kind of fun. But yeah, the inside was kind of dreamy and very much like that other light. So I liked making smaller houses just as a thought process for bigger ones. This one is, again, industrial glass made out of fluorescent tubing that's enameled and fired and then woven together with copper wire. But with glass, my big passion is Marini and cane. So this piece on the left, which is blown, but no opening for it, is sort of has numerous layers. I studied painting for 6 years before I came to glass, so which was always exciting. But Marini, it's like this organic mathematical structure, and there I am. I think that's 1991 in California doing something. These are Italian designs, but I just really am attracted to the way that you can put these little objects together and make any kind of pictures or whatnot. And I really enjoyed my time in Murano and Venice. And so this is the River of Glass in Murano. I was just there like a month ago for a visit and to check up with friends because I was supposed to go during the beginning of COVID and it got delayed. But it was very influential, my time there, and I loved being on the lagoon. So I wanted to make a hat for the ocean. The Doge, who's the elected official back in 15th and 16th centuries, 16th century, he was the elected official of Venice. He had a certain shape hat, and it was unique for Italy or for Europe. So I decided that I should make the ocean a hat to match, because the Doge would go out every year on a golden gondola, and he would go through the lagoon to the headwaters, and he would marry the sea every year ceremonially with a big ring with a big glass gem in it and a wreath. And so I thought she needed a hat too, like the lagoon, so it has the green of the lagoon and the blue of the sky, the horizon line. So my bread and butter for a while was making vessels with a peacock pattern kind of look to it. And I really loved looking at the historical work, but I like innovating my own stuff. I don't want to copy people too much. And so I started using clear Marini with color on the outside, and it sort of translated into working with this material, which is like a hexagonal tubing with a hole in the center. And I just wanted to show you a little video. So Erik, that's the cue to show this video. So I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of process of how I make the glass. And so yeah, I'm in the hot shop. I've got color. I make a bubble, and then I throw it into this. You can see I've got a couple steel molds, but these are all hexagonal shaped molds. And I've got this nice frozen little part, and I make a little knob on the tip and get it hot, dip it in water, and pull it out. So this one's a little cold. So then I transition to this one. This is at the Museum of Glass. So we try to get a nice taper on it when we pull it out. So I've got a thicker part and a thinner part. With my little guys, I throw them into plaster blocks, and then I cut them on the saw. Everything has to be cut on the saw, so I can cut 20 at the same time, or I can cut one at the same time. Then they have to be stacked on a plate. Here's a fresh bucket of cut. You can see the saw cut edge on the tubing. So it's kind of a little more matte looking. And then after it's fired, it kind of becomes conical a little bit, and it's nice and juicy. The colors are all pretty. And the orientation of the conical unit will allow me to make curves one way or the other. And then this is sort of like a, sped up me working on one of the jellyfish for the Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium. For my 50th birthday, I had a party. I like working with the community to make artwork. I don't like working with glass. We kind of work alone a lot. We work in groups, and I enjoy that. Working in the theater, as Lynn mentioned, to do costuming, I also work with cloth, work with people too. So I like that. So here's sort of that piece that was in the little video called Flight. So I really love the seaweed in this area from diving. It's just amazing. It's so inspiring, these buoyant algae that just do so much for the environment. And that's sort of my lame attempt at a holdfast. I love holdfasts. Then this is more cane, just sort of trying to act and be like seaweed. And then a metal shape with a hollow marini in between. This is a chandelier that I made for Carl and Jan Fisher, so it's on dash point. Oh, there it is when it's dark. You can see the little kelp crab there, and then some plumose anemones, and then just the ruffle kind of. They really wanted something. They wanted the stuff that was in the water on their ceiling, so, and that's what I did for them. I just love the fractal expansion on seaweed, and just how giant and amazing it is out here, especially the holdfast. Boy, those are just crazy. I love the holdfast. So here's my first big one that I made with the hollow marini. Now this is about 5 feet tall, and you can see my holdfast is more of a little ball, but it's kind of cute. And I would, if I did a little bit of diving around here, it's darn cold, so it's hard to be in the water, but I go in low tide and pull kelp up out of the water and take a look at it too. So this one's sort of like a cameo cutout of Alaria, and you guys know Alaria, that's the winged kelp, and it's also, I think, called sea bacon because it's it's not like sweet like sugar rack, but yeah, about 5 feet, and that's about 5 feet across. And then a blue piece, this one's called Arabesque, maybe? Or is that this one? No, that one's Erik. Got a few little gems hanging off of it, sort of a compilation of 3 different views, but the work is very undulating. I also make jewelry, so I got a couple necklaces. This one's called an acclimatization. This one's called moule, which it means mussels in French. I was in France on a residency this past fall and finished up this necklace, which is just a big marini necklace. And then I do bracelets as well. Now, Buckminster Fuller, why is he in here? Well, he was an engineer, but he came to architecture through bioengineering. And so you can see all these hexagonal units on his big building there. So when I make my sea stones, which are spherical, they really lock into place. Each of the conical units really fits in there, so they're nice and strong, these pieces. And they're smaller than my big pieces, so they don't take as long. So it's fun to work on. Something that doesn't take 300 hours, it's like more 5 or 6 or a week. And then I'm just going to finish up. Well, this is some public art. So this is a piece I made with Lisa Liedgren. I think it was this past year and the year before, called Oceans of Emotion. And we were just paid some money to put some stuff up on a construction fence. But these are all sequins. And on them, we asked people to write down what they would like to release and embrace during COVID, stuff you want to get rid of, stuff you want to bring towards you. So we have a lot of different, and then this was supposed to be a video, but I didn't put it in. But they really wave in the wind, and it was great to hand a bunch to your artist friends like Dick Weiss, he'll be speaking third. And then they give their interpretation of things they would like to release or hold on to, and then we get to hang them on a fence for 6 months. So we got to put everybody's anxiety and hopes together and then have it on this construction fence. It was kind of fun. And that was in Seattle. That was the East Wallingford shaft site. So this is part of the Ship Canal Water Quality Project, where they're building a big tunnel from Ballard to Wallingford, and that's going to hold if there's a big rainstorm, and then there's an overflow from the storm drains. It usually goes right into the canal with all the poop. So now they're building this holding tank that will then hold the overflow and then slowly drain it out. And so Mud Honey, which was the digger that they dropped into Ballard, I don't know if it's made it over all the way to Wallingford yet, but they did name the drill, so that was kind of fun. But yeah, that was the SPU kind of thing, Seattle Public Utilities. Boop, 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 boop. And then I got to make some jellyfish for Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium. I competed with other people, and then I sold them on the big project, as always. So then, like you saw, I had a lot of people help me work on the glass. I also produced some of the glass at the Museum of Glass here and also at Hilltop Artists. So they helped me make this piece and weave it together as well. I'm really excited to be working with them on the Fuse Together project. And then I just installed this piece in Highline College, which is in Des Moines, so, you know, part of the way up to Seattle. And so it's in the biology department. It's a bull kelp sculpture. So you can see the nematocyst, which is like the head is sort of kind of blocked, but right at the termination of that stipe. And then the stipe goes all the way down, and you can see the little holdfast there. So I really like depicting the local seaweed. It just really reminds me of diving, that sort of buoyant thing that would normally be a pile of mush. But, you know, if you're in the water, you see these forests, and it's just gorgeous. And, yeah, thank you very much. And then,
Okay, when people ask you a question, could you repeat the question?
yes. There's a question.
Are you still doing yoga?
Yes.
Where?
Just at home.
Oh,
You know, I stopped going to yoga during COVID and stuff, so I'm recovering from some surgery, so doing it at home these days.
Any more questions? Who took that photograph of the jellyfish in the aquarium?
Rosari Lynch, she's a local artist here.
Right.
She moved to the area a couple years ago, right? Yeah.
It's a beautiful photograph.
Oh yeah, she's an amazing photographer, but she's a artist photographer. She doesn't shoot work for people anymore. I was lucky to get her when I did.
Great.
Yeah, that's who took the photograph of the jellyfish, Rosari Lynch.
Kate, where is this piece?
It's in Highline College
Which
in
is
Des
shown
Moines, so
in
it's
Des
right off I-5
And
at the
so
Des Moines exit.
where is it in the building?
It's in the biology department. So it's in an atrium, so above it is skylight.
Okay.
And then that's a cutout in that second floor, and then it goes down to the first floor.
Oh,
You can see there's like a little level there, so there's a desk underneath there and everything. I just put it in July.
was the budget much different than your budget for
Yes.
Point Defiance?
Yes,
Was it better?
yes. Till the tax man took a bunch of it away.
so have you ever had, well, or is it even appealing to you, the idea of doing a whole kelp forest?
Oh, I want to.
I bet you do.
But like with the book help, I looked at it and dreamed about it for 10 years before I had the opportunity. With the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, they gave me that front window, that 2-story tall window, and I was like, oh, now it's time. And I was very lucky to be able to do that right after I finished the jellyfish. It was like a big big piece here.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? Yes, there's,
So does that piece bend, or is it pretty fixed in its placement?
I could probably torque it around a bunch, but it's you can raise or lower it. It comes in a couple different. So the question was is if this piece bends, but it's each of the blades of the bull kelp has 3 segments that kind of bolt together. So if you bend it a little bit too much, it's kind of flexible, so you can kind of bend it out of shape pretty easily if you wanted to. So when I hang it, I have to be careful to kind of take care of it. Because it's made out of silicon bronze. It's not steel, so it's flexible.
One more question?
Made out of what?
Silicon bronze is the metal kind of making the outline.
And then you lay the,
Then I weave the glass in between, yeah.
with what?
Copper wire? Yeah, I usually work with copper wire because of the softness of it. And I like that it doesn't rust, you know, like silicon bronze won't rust. I try to use materials that don't rust just in case, because a lot of people like to take my work to Florida and keep it there. And it's salty like it is here, you know. So with the jellyfish, we had to make sure that that was stainless steel. So you can see the stainless steel that these pieces slide over. Because it's going to be in an aquarium, it's going to be exposed to salt water the entire time. So that's something that if I can get my metal workers to work in bronze or stainless steel, I prefer it, if possible. But, you know, artists are leaving Seattle like rats off a sinking ship. So coming down here to Tacoma instead, and Portland.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find metal workers now, yeah. Yes.
Are you in Tacoma?
I live in Seattle, but I'm in like West Seattle. I'm
Almost here.
I'm pretty down on the edge of Burien, so. But I come down here to work at the Museum of Glass pretty regularly and to work with Hilltop artists.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Excuse, one more question. What is that on your object?
That one there?
Yeah.
See, this is a smaller version of this guy. Nope, that's the one of this piece. Alaria. So it looks small, but it's actually like 5 feet across. It's like a cameo cutout of a piece of kelp. It reminds me also of a cowrie. Reminds me of a cowrie shell, kind of, which reminds me of being in the Bahamas. But then the termination, that reminds me more of pinto abalones. And how they love to eat kelp, and how they scrunch up their mouths when they know the kelp is coming. They're just the cutest little things ever.
Kate, the longer you talk, the funnier you
Yeah. I wish it would get half an hour.
There we go.
After everybody else presents, maybe we can have Kate present again.
Yeah.
No. I didn't get the buzzer, so.
So Mindy Barker is next. She's a Tacoma resident. She's a lifelong, it says here, Washington State resident, born in Tacoma. After receiving her BFA from Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, she started Mindy Barker Designs in 1993, a one-woman art business that specializes in commissioned murals, faux finishes, trompe-l'oeil, custom paintings, and original artwork within homes and businesses. Since 2013, Mindy began designing and painting commissioned large-scale murals for public spaces. Along with showing and selling her own artwork through galleries, she also creates original paintings and illustrations, art prints, fabric designs, and hand-painted murals on canvas, which can be applied like wallpaper. And at one time, she even painted in dark chocolate. I remember those days. Her designs consist of color, line, frolicking made-up creatures, imagined protective spirits, objects disposed of or demolished, trapped words, fantastical plants, mycelium bacterial colonies, colorful minerals, and perceived movement, like those she observes in nature, streaming water, twisting fabric, or swirling smoke. The combination of these elements results in a playful and discovery for viewer piece where the image continues off through the borders. Mindy, you're up.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you all for coming here and supporting Lynn on all her adventures. She does quite neat things for the community. And I love seeing all these faces because there's a lot of them I adore. Anyways, so yes, I wrangle color and I wrangle lines. And I've lately been doing a whole bunch of like these big animals with these big faces staring at you, and they're oversized. And sometimes I ask myself, well, how did I get here? And have I learned anything? And that's what we'll all talk about. So it all began, again, like Lynn said, in 1993. I started, let's see if I can work this little thing. Yep. Ooh, it's really red. In 1993, I started doing faux finishing and directly onto the wall. And there was a lot of animals back then even, but not the ones looking at you straight on. And lots of trompe-l'oeil and finishes like Venetian plaster, glazing, wood graining, marbleizing, gilding, and lots and lots of kids' rooms. And with consulting with clients, I would say that, hey, I'm pretty much the arm that comes from your head from your brain onto the wall, and so whatever you see in there, I'm going to get out onto the wall, and I kind of coax that out. So in 2006, I think it was, I went to Iceland for the very first time, and that's where my mother's side is from. And when I arrived there, it was just like I was home. I just loved it. The landscape had a big impact on me. And so it had a huge impact on my artwork also. And here's a picture of some of the lava, and I just thought it had the most beautiful shapes. And what really, really captured my attention was because it kind of reminded me of some of the things I had been doing in decorative painting, especially with the marbleizing. And also so this is just like a blown up portion of marbleizing. And back then, with my business in reflection, it really taught me how to think quickly and to trust my ability to finish a project and trust the flow. And I was able to turn off my critical mind and just start making a mark, messing up things and just starting for it and going for it. And I also had a camera with me at all times during these years. And I love that the camera, photography, was a great way to keep record keeping. And so I started to do this kind of work where I'd take an image, and so there's actually a couple of photographs in there, and then I extend them. But you can kind of see, whoo, this is a little too fast. We'll recognize somebody there. Anyways, so I just started to extend the images on past the borders. And then, so I'm going to go into a little bit of an example here. So there's Lynn right there, and this is back in 2007. And that's Francesca. I don't know if you see that, the woman on the left-hand side, and you see her little hat there. So I had taken a photo of, I think of her, the hat, and so that actually became part, so you could just see the tiny little bit of it. So everything was extended past the borders. And so what I would do is take the photo, transfer it, do a photo transfer onto the substrate, and then it would just like jump off from there. This work here was reaction to the precise nature of decorative painting, because everything I had to do was just whatever my client wanted. And I really needed something to keep me loose. And so that's what I started doing this stuff. And this is, you can see the photograph there, probably you can see it pretty well. It's the one with the black with the little head of the dog. And that's a friend of mine's dog in New York City, and so I just took a little thing of it and started extending it. I also started way back when to do another series, and this is also a photograph. So there's actually a photograph right in the center, right where that 25 is. And this was of a door in Reykjavik, and so I was really experimenting with photographs that had just drama, like dramatic color and some kind of texture. And then my whole thing was that you would disguise the photo, so you couldn't really see it. But there's also, this is kind of a blown out photo. It's a little bit weird, but so it's a little exaggerated, but there was also this sedimentary movement that I always started, I just happened to start putting into things. And it was also a background, and to me it represented kind of like I would see the negative space in objects when I was doing work, and it became almost like sediment, like sedimentary movements again. But it was really, really far back in the background. This is actually a really close-up of a Keith Haring mural in New York. And it was just a little teeny bit of it. You can kind of see that little box on the bottom or the middle, and so everything else is all mixed. And so I actually do a lot of color matching, which I absolutely love to do. And then one day I was near my studio and I saw this hillside, and I thought, I just thought about all the layering that was there and all the history and the compressed history that's in that sediment, and just reminded me of all of our memory and how, there's a lot of history there, like all of time. And it also reminded me of the sedimentary movements, I suppose, that were starting to show up in my work. And so when I was asked to do a solo show at the Fulcrum Gallery, I called this Slice. It became, it was actually glass hung from the ceiling, and I used transparent photographs embedded in this kind of, also again, sedimentary or cellular structures that were on the glass, and there's Claudia from way back when. This is actually 2009, I think, or 2008, and so the idea was that I feel like my memory is like a landfill, so you just kind of throw stuff in, and it just keeps piling up, and it decomposes, and then gosh, there's so many things I don't remember anymore, but all of a sudden there'll just be these bright, bright images that I'll remember. So this is similar to that, whereas it's almost like the slice of my brain, like brain specimen on a microscope slide. So they're hung there, and and I like that. As you see Claudia, you could see through it, so she became part of the piece. And all of my work at this time was informed my infatuation with minerals and soil, and photography, the obsession, and the decorative painting, especially the faux marble. And then I started. That's interesting. To shut down my critical mind further, I started doing this work, and it was all on round discs, and I call them strata discs. And I'd start out with a scumble, which I call a scumble, which is just kind of messing up the structure or the substrate, and then pretty much staring at it and seeing what things start popping out. So it was just whatever I felt like was coming out at me. So it just pretty much freed up my mind. And so in 2014, I was offered a house in Seattle. It was going to be torn down, and before it was torn down, they went around the space and they put holes all over in the wall and the ceiling, and I thought, oh, that's kind of weird. but it was also intrigued me, so I thought, well, maybe I'll just do a whole interior installation because they're going to tear it down anyways. So I started just doing that kind of the idea where I was loosening up my mind with the Stratodisc. Similar to that, I started doing it all over the ceilings. So this became all over the walls, and I also liked that it was, you know, it's impermanent, and that the building was going to be gone. And I really liked that idea. And I also felt like the little holes that were everywhere were like little wounds and like past memories or past inhabitants or past emotions. They were all coming through the little holes. And so I just felt like whatever I wanted to do, I would do on there. And yeah, so it was just more of a continuation of the Stratodisc. Then in 2013, so there's like this little bit of this time where my business per se was like a little bit of a standstill because of the turning of the economy. But so I started venturing into the public realm. And so this was my very first mural I did in 2013 with Kristen Giordano. She's a local photographer. And we actually took these photographs of images of animals and blew them up. But what was really funny is that, and the whole idea was that trying to get people to get out of their cars and use some other form of transportation. And it was funny because they were just wheat pasted, but people would stop by and say, "Hey, that looks great," you know, and "Wow, it looks great what you're painting there." And I'd be like, "Hi, they're actually not painted," you know, as they're driving by. So the next time I thought, well, I'm going to promise myself that the next time I do a mural, I will actually paint a real mural, an animal on there that kind of looks like a wheat pasted one. So that was this one. That was the Yes mural, local mural here. And the following one was also in here in Tacoma. It's on M.L.K, 14th and M.L.K. It doesn't really actually have animals necessarily, but I feel like it still has the sedimentary kind of influence that's in the flowingness of the things that I've been doing lately. So this is actually a mural I did for the Fred Meyer in Gig Harbor, the newer one. And this was the very first mural that I did that the animals started becoming more prominent. So they were kind of like looking strictly at the audience. And the overall design starts actually with the boat there with the wood round, and then it echoes out and it goes into the soil, air, and water, which starts to become a theme. And this is also the very first mural that was actually done on canvas, and I actually applied it onto the wall like wallpaper. So this is actually 46 feet long.
Where is it in the store?
It's actually above the cash register if you're taking stuff out. Yeah, all these are kind of fairly big. That like the last one was actually, so these was 81 feet long. And anyway, so they get progressively kind of bigger. So, and then the following one I did right after that was actually at the Harvest History Museum in Quincy, Washington. And I put both of these in because they're representational. They had very much strict themes, one Gig Harbor, one of Quincy. But I also started to incorporate the animals looking directly. They were also looking directly at the audience. So pretty much from here on out, we have the animals coming forward. And what I was starting to do here too was combine something that was maybe more trompe-l'oeil or realistic with something that was more graphic behind. So a graphic element. This is actually, the background there is actually the Tacoma Tide Flats. It's my interpretation of it. And this was actually two portraits. They're as tall as I am, a little over my height, these little dogs. But my clients' dogs were deceased, so they wanted me to memorialize them. Anyway, so again, you see this graphic. But the thing is that with this one, I actually cut out the dogs. So they're separate with the two little flowers on their heads. But the rest of it is actually painted onto the wall. And so it was the first one I had actually pasted onto the wall itself. This is actually the temporary boarded up graffiti garages that they're now gone now. The building's going to be demolished in a few weeks or months. And I had put on 3 animals, one for air, water, and then soil. And they're all native to this area. And the background is my blown up version of like the shapes of life. So I did start doing like a series of things for Pacific Place up in Seattle. So all these animals are taller than I am, and they're cut out. So, but of course, that was a fawn. And then this one is the polar bear, and a rabbit, and a fox. And I did put this one on. There's no animals that are looking at you directly, but there is, the octopus and barnacles. And those are animals. So, so I just thought I'd throw that in. And this a client had me do. They thought it would be really funny to. They have an Airbnb, and they thought it would be hilarious to have a banana slug, and so people that came and stayed at their place, they'd look out and see a little banana slug. It's actually a combination of the shapes of life and bicycle spokes. That's something that they were really into. These little guys they're also cut out. They're done on canvas. The background wasn't. But I did this for a client that wanted something for a backdrop for a Zoom call. So I placed it so when she looks in through the camera, her head's right in the middle. So I placed them so they were kind of like looking over her shoulders. This is a project I did not too long ago, just last spring, and it's in Lacey. It's for Amazon, and it's at their Lacey distribution center. And that's the native animals are from the Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge. So long. And it's actually, the background is an aerial view of the flats in a graphic form. And my current project right now that I'm doing is actually for the Washington State Arts Commission. And I'm going to be doing, I'm in the process of finishing up 3 different pieces, and they're all 8 by 8 feet tall. And this is my prototype. This guy is taller than I am too, but it's just my prototype. And so you can see that there's an animal, but there's something behind, and I'm calling those culture plates. And it's another word for a petri dish, but I thought that was a little bit more fun as a culture plate idea. But it is pretty much the same thing as when I'm doing the strata discs. It's just me doing whatever I want to do on the back, although they do have to do something with a water, soil, or air. This little guy is, he's actually not too little. He's about 5 feet tall, I don't know, 6 feet wide or whatever. But this is, I took, because it's going to be, these pieces are going to be hung in a junior high or middle school in Ridgefield, Washington. I'm using animals that are at the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge. And so this little guy is a tree frog. So these are like little tiny little frogs, but I've blown them up. And behind, and again, this is all just, as Tori over here, she's one of my studio mates. These are completely in progress, so they're not finished at all. But this is the water culture plate. And so these animals there'll be a culture plate with an animal in front of it, and they'll be hung separately among themselves, so they'll be irregular shaped. And this is the owl, so it's a barred owl, and that one is also taller than I am, and with its corresponding air culture plate. And again, there's going to be a lot of little mycelium and different species and things that I can see in this that just kind of start to pop out. Like you can kind of see like a butterfly coming out, and there's like just different things. And then there's this white-tailed deer with its culture plate, which is actually 2 white oaks that have been mirrored to each other, and it reminds me of like our blood systems and mycelium and things of that sort. But anyways, that's it.
Questions?
So Becky,
Yeah, so are you gluing the figures that are painted on canvas, are you gluing the canvas directly to the wall?
I am. I use wallpaper paste, so it's reversible, so I
Oh, really?
yeah, I've put them up and then I've taken them down before, and yeah, so yeah.
I just wondered what the red square with the white in the middle on most of your.
Thank you.
Did you?
That's actually so that she's asking with the red square with with the red square. That's my signature, so if you see that anywhere, sometimes I don't sign stuff, and I'll just put that in. A lot of times I try to incorporate it in so you don't actually immediately see it, and then it's just kind of fades in there. Yeah?
This last commission for the Washington State, you know, for the schools, what's it on? Is it on board or?
Yeah, it actually is on canvas.
Canvas.
So it's done on canvas, but I have a fabricator that's making the substrate. And so he's designed this whole thing where it's going to be hung independently on French plates. And then, so the culture plates will be put on, and then the animal actually is then hooked on to that plate. So it'll actually be dimensional too.
And when you paint, do you paint a little bit and then you step back to see how it looks?
Yeah.
Or?
Tori? What do you think?
Yeah, that was my question. Well, how do you make these big, tall things? Are you on a ladder, or do you
Yeah, I'm
do
on a
it on the,
ladder.
yeah?
Some of the things, this I'm on a ladder. This was 12 feet tall. This is just like a snippet of the rabbit, but that whole piece was like 10 feet or 12 feet tall. So I'm just on ladders. A lot of times I'm on scaffolding or lifts or boom lifts.
Cool.
Scissor lifts.
I'm curious how any of you, but you in particular, market yourselves. How do you find a new customer? Or how do they find you?
Well, when I was doing decorative painting, I worked through designers mostly. That was like my bread and butter. But then things change, you know, like the styles are different. Back then I was doing a lot of neoclassic work, you know, that was just the call. Everybody wanted that. So that was the big thing. But then when that died out, that's why I started doing calls. I started doing, applying for different grants. And so my next one is going to be at the aquarium also. I'll be doing the South Pacific Aquarium. Yeah. And so that'll be my next project after this one's done. But these were all, I just applied for them and got on rosters and then was chosen.
The one up
Anybody
in
else?
Seattle?
No, the one at Point Defiance, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of paint are you using?
So I'm actually using acrylics. Yeah. And specifically golden acrylics. They're liquid acrylics. So I use most of my stuff is I make a glaze. So it's very transparent. So I just keep adding layers until I get what I want. That's also my decorative painting experience is from glazing. Yeah. Any other questions?
How much time does something like this take?
Well, these actually went really fast. Actually, I painted these guys on the wall. So that I went to Amazon and the three. I don't know if I could get back to the. Probably can't get. They were all these guys. They were all I painted those directly on, and I think I was there maybe a total of I don't know if I was there quite a month, but the animals went fairly quick. I think I probably did those in I don't know each one of them probably took 2 days or 3 days maybe. Yeah, they went pretty fast. You know, just having a bunch of people in a huge. I mean, this room was huge, and I used really bright colors. The reason why there's such bright colors around the animals is because I wanted to be much more. My end goal is to get people to look at the thing with the little eyeballs, look towards it, but then look past it and say these are actually animals that are clean for us to look at them and to help. So like the idea was that it has the bright colors around them, so it's more of an emergency kind of a situation. Plus, I'm in Amazon, so it was a little bit of my statement. My statement there was kind of sneaky.
We've got a question back here.
Hi, Mindy. I have a question.
Hi.
Okay, I hadn't heard you use that word before when you were talking about your stratus discs? I want to get up there and tell everyone for you, but instead I'm going to ask you to explain again how you start with it sounds like you started with the stratus discs, and I got to see you doing it for these culture plates this time, when you have this clean new surface, and then what is it, scrumming?
I call it scumbling.
Scumbling.
It is pretty much do this. because I don't want to, and I drip stuff, let it drip and whatnot, because I just want to be able to see things in it and kind of turn. Normally I would turn things around, but those are way too big, so I can't turn them around. But when I'm doing the smaller things, I can turn around and just start seeing little creatures in them. Yeah, it's pretty much my imagination, whatever I think like soil would have in it, like all the little creatures that I just kind of make up. So because you could just grab a handful of soil, there's just so much organisms that are in that little piece. So I'm like, it's like jumping off of there. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So our last guest is Dick Weiss. He's a Seattle-based artist known for his large glass window installations. He has been working in stained glass since 1971. He was born in Everett in 1946, the oldest of 3 boys. His dad worked in the lumber mills in Everett, and his mom was the daughter of a Lutheran pastor and she was a homemaker. He graduated from Yale University in 1968 and then returned to Everett, where he worked on the Great Northern Railroad for 7 years as a switchman. No wonder he gets a high Social Security check every month.
Yes.
Everything changed when he took a stained glass class in 1971. Dick?
Okay. Erik, lower the light, please. Let's see, so. Yep, I've been doing stained glass for about 50 years now, and I'm still into it. I was a hippie in the early days, and hippies wanted stained glass windows in their house in the late 60s and early 70s. I did a bathroom, I did one for my kitchen, and just kept going, and luckily, I still am into it 50 years later. And so the last 30 years, it was very hard for me to do what I wanted and have people cut holes in their walls. It turned out hardly anybody did that. And so for a stained glass window that I made. So I started doing these freestanding things. I don't blow glass. It's really hard to blow glass. And so friends of mine blow these things. These are rondelles made by Ben Moore. And I play around with them like little pieces of paper and put them together. And that's that. So let's see here. Okay. My studio back of my house. I'm actually not so much in Seattle. About half the time I'm in Tacoma, since I'm Lynn's partner. And so, hey, Tacoma rocks, really. And so, you guys, when I first met Lynn, I had no idea that, along with Lynn, I would meet 10 to 15 of my best friends I'm ever going to know. And it's like, as far as I can see here in Tacoma, it's like Lake Wobegon. Everybody's above average. It's like, holy smokes. Anyway, there's my studio in Fremont there, the opening to it. And there I am working at my table. I work on a 4x8 sheet of sheetrock. I do pretty much everything on that. I have you got to be able to see what it looks like in the light. And so you have all these pieces of glass you cut, and then you tape them up on an easel and look at them in the light before you let them up. Here I am. One reason I like stained glass is half the time, painting is like the hardest thing I ever do. You got to think all the time, it feels like, when you're painting. Decision, decision, decision. Stained glass, half the time, is nothing but decisions on design. And then half the time, you're like a carpenter building a wall. The fabrication thing is completely different. So I like that. It's bifurcated. Here I am puttying a window. You make the biggest mess, stick the putty in, and then try to clean it up completely. Putting it all together. Stained glass is basically a jigsaw puzzle. It was funny, as a kid, I never liked jigsaw puzzles, but that's all I do now is make glass jigsaw puzzles and put them together with lead around it, solder both sides, putty, and you have a stained glass window. This is just some examples of taped up on my easel, just a close-up of little hand-blown glass. There's no lead around them because I'm just taping them up, looking at them, seeing if they look okay together. Whoops.
That's not supposed to be in there. Erik?
You know, Erik, and also you could lower the lights more. The lights seem awfully bright up here. I don't know. Knock them down, please. I don't want them to look at me anyway. Turn it down a little bit.
Well, the problem is a camera.
Perfect.
We're recording this, and there's a limit to the camera's ability to see in the dark.
Okay. Okay. Sure, no worries. You know, it just somehow seems appropriate. I don't know. After 50 years doing this, that's the way I feel too. Sometimes things start to go haywire. That's a great picture, by the way. It is a very cool picture. I don't know if I should count this as part of my 15 minutes.
You've got 4 minutes left.
Okay. No, it's no, it is. You know, it is a great community I've met through Lynn. A lot of you guys, as Mindy said, looking out at the audience, all the nice faces you recognize. Oh, here we go. Oh, now we're. Oh, thank you, Erik. Much appreciate. Anyway, here I am, my kitchen table, showing some of my friends. Ben Moore, who unfortunately died recently. These are some reject lamps he made for a big outfit. He and another guy called Dante Marioni made these things for some Australian restaurant. And I get the rejects because I get to cut them up for stained glass. I like to joke that stained glass is a field where you can take a $15,000 object and turn it into a $600 object. That's the magic of stained glass. So, let's see. I'm pushing this thing and nothing's happening here. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. Now we're moving forward here. Thank you, Erik. These are, sometimes I have a lot of friends because I've been around the glass scene so long. And another friend is a guy called Dale Chihuly. And this is some big things that Jimmy Mongrain made for him that he wanted to possibly lead into windows. So I was looking at him on my easel. Very hard to lead. Dante Marioni, the son of Paul Marioni, is a good glass blower, and Janusz Pozniak also. And there's a very young me, and this is in Ben Moore's studio. There's a much older me down at the Museum of Glass, working with a friend of mine, Walt Lieberman, that we did a series of work together. I really like to hitch myself to other artists because there's a lot of wonderful artists out there. So, you know, it's like a twin-engine plane. You get to go faster where you want to go just by being with someone else. I like to paint on glass. I love painting. And so I painted and then would fire them on in a kiln and let them into windows. Did a residency at this school called Pilchuck, north of Seattle, and they were all painters. I would give them all pieces of glass, and they would scratch images in them. I'd fire them in a kiln, and so there's some mine, but most of these are also my friends up there that were at the residency, and make them into a stained glass screen. There's a couple of self-portraits, and I did a diary was at that residency, and so it's just everything's writing about what the heck's going on and how somebody needs to go to lunch and someone's yelling, and I just write all that stuff and then wrote it and lettered them in around. Early stained glass window, when I was just doing more free-form stuff, thinking about what I'd like to do. early commission. It was, you know, I didn't, it's so good to try to compete for stuff, but it's a drag because oftentimes you don't get it. And so I sort of gave up after a while, but the state of Washington is a wonderful thing if you get into the registry because they come to you. This is for the Kent Senior Citizen Center. It's about 8 feet tall. It was a state project, I think. University of Washington Marine Sciences. It was a marine biology thing. So this thing is 6 feet tall. You know, you can. It's. I love geometry, but I also like loosey-goosey, expressionistic stuff. And some they wanted a room divider and a nonprofit thing, and I gave them a sort of wall of glinty glass. There's a wonderful man who blows hand-blown glass in Seattle, Jim Flanagan, Fremont Antique, and that's some of his red glass in the background. Been lucky enough to represented by a gallery. All of us glass artists were desperate for a gallery in the early 80s, late 70s. Bill Traver started a gallery. No one showed glass. Everybody dumped all their images onto him. He chose a bunch of people to have shows, and I was one of those people, and that was, you know, 45 years ago or something like that. So I'm still with the Traver Gallery. That's Sarah Traver there in the foreground. And this is a show with, joint show I had with someone else, Cappy Thompson. And there's stained glass windows. Cappy did the clay things. See, these are some of those wonderful people from Tacoma. John, Duncan, and Mary chatting at the opening of show at Traver. There's just some more of the screens. They really need directional light. So unfortunately, the gallery is just a big box, and there's lights bouncing all over the place. That's why this building is so good for light. It's basically like a little shell, and the light just pours through like water through a little spot. Just more shows showing the. Against, I love clear glass, but clear glass shows whatever the heck's behind it, and the camera does not respect that. It looks right through. So these are in a white field, so that. Sometimes I like figurative. You eat your cake and have it too. It's geometry. I love geometry. I've sort of at a period where geometry was a big deal in the 60s. Loved it. Fell in love with it. I still love geometry, but narrative stuff is good too. So these sort of a little bit, these are trees sort of, or could be figures. I don't know. Sometimes I just give in to something I maybe shouldn't have done, but you just don't, you just don't know. And so there's another one. It's another. The Washington State projects choose you. You don't compete. The schools come. There's a database with everybody in it, and they see Mindy, and they go, "We want Mindy," and so there's no competition. And so we want Kait Rhoads, and so in this case, there was a high school outside of Spokane that wanted Dick Weiss, and so that's. I saw it as sort of a winged victory thing, you know, because it's a sort of a school is a way to learn and to it bettered me. I came from a way Yahoo low collar background, ended up much better just from education. Anyway, this was supposed to be like a winged victory or something. The way I saw it a little bit, or wings anyway, over this main student entrance. When I showed the drawing, they had a couple of students that were also on the committee to choose to whether or not I would get it. For this design, and everybody sort of liked the design. I wish I could show you the drawing. I didn't show you the drawing, but finally one of the girls said, you know, I have an issue a little bit that the negative space in between the wings look an awful lot like a penis to me. And I go, well, of course we all know penises are bad for starts, and then, but the principal thought that was pretty funny, but. I said, you know, I can see why you said that. My drawing is pretty rudimentary, but honest to gosh, you won't see it like that when it's installed. And She came up and said, yeah, it doesn't look like that once it's installed. So anyway, Gates Foundation Garage. It's it's the only time. This was a competition, but they asked me to compete, and so there's a first time in my life I've gone into a room, and I sometimes can feel like what a minority feels like. There was not a man in the entire room. It was all women. The whole jury was women. It was like, oh, somehow it was like, I just was like, oh, okay, sure. And it was funny how it was interesting to me, but I did okay. There it is. Here's another school. This is, what is this? Shorewood High School, north of Seattle. Above the door, they had a bird, was their image, just as a wing, close-up of a wing, abstracted somewhat, of course. And this is the body of the bird over a door. And here's Federal Way High School. I get maybe a project every 5 or 10 years. They don't come in very often. But it does. When you do, you sort of try to live off of it for a while. It's like the whale washes in and you strip it for a while and live off of it. And there's some of the panels are 8 feet tall. Sometimes I work with other artists. This is another artist, an old friend of mine, Preston Singletary. He's another glass artist, a native guy. And he gave this design to me and wanted to turn it into stained glass. And so these are some, it's supposed to be a mountain theme and a river theme, but these are both mountain themes. I didn't show you the river themes. Kate made some wonderful rondelles, had rondelles made, and she said, go ahead, turn these into a screen. It's kind of I wish it had been sunnier because some of the rondelles are pretty dense, but she liked the trees, and so there it is. There's the rondelles were done by Kate, and I made the pattern. Dale Chihuly gave me some glass way back in the 70s and early 80s, and so I turned these machias into a stained glass screen. I forgot all about them. I slumped them flat, put them in a box, and I just discovered them like a year or two ago, and so I put them into this window. My partner, Lynn and Nino, helped me build this hut of stained glass windows for a show at the Bellevue Art Museum. Once you have these screens, what do you do with them? I mean, after a while, what happens to all these screens? So Lynn said, let's make them into a structure. So it was totally her idea, and thank you, Lynn. John and Claudia, this is their bathroom, and it's a little dark picture, but nice little window for their bathroom. I like doing work for my friends. Oh, Peter, here's Peter and Donna, and little independent panels. I like little panels are lovely to make. They can be very free. They don't have to be rectangular. Airport. Big wood commissions are hard because they never usually stay. They'll be lucky if they're that way for 20 years. This was the south end of the main terminal, but then the airport changes the terminal and everything's got to move around. So I made this originally in 1988. 13 years later, they called me and said, well, the good news is we're not going to throw it away. But the bad news is we've got to move it because we're going to build off that end of the terminal, and we have to move your window, and we want to re-site it, and we want it to be 13 feet bigger. And so I go, okay, well, but I wasn't going to put it on the high end. I was going to put it in the skinnier end. So I'm not going to put it out here like that till you're 30 feet. I'm sorry, going right here in the middle where it's smaller. And so there is where they re-sited to the north end now of the main terminal. And you can see it's a little bumpier now. It goes instead of just straight on up. Close-up of it. It's always at half mast because there's all the glass is tinted, and so you're cutting out about half the light. If you ever see the doors open and shut at the airport, you'll see how much light is being cut out. That's it. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And thank you guys for showing up tonight. Any questions?
That studio space that you have, it looks pretty small to be able to work on a piece like you did in the airport. So where do you work on that stuff? Do you do that in your studio?
In that studio. Right,
Really?
everything's built on a 4x8 table.
Wow.
And so, unfortunately, you take little pictures and just stick them there. You know, now people are smart enough to have computers and they can do stuff with that. But I just take them and cut little pictures and just as I go for each panel.
And then they're all assembled at the site.
Yeah, it's, you know, like it's all windows. All windows are modular units. They're all just, you just stick them in. It's, yeah. It's always stuck in like a storm window behind the existing window, so that way the worst things for stained glass are gravity and wind, and so it's protected from the wind.
So how do you deal with the different thicknesses of glass from those rondelles when you're moving from one?
That's a trick for sure. They have leads. You know, you got a little I-beam that you stick it in. This is the cross section of it. They manufacture these leads, and then you just stick glass in from both sides, and it's grabbed by the lip of the lead, and you can get higher ones and lower ones. The gold standard is 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch. That's what a lot of commercial sheet glass is. Double strength glass it's called, but you know, yes, the hand-blown glass gets pretty thick and can be a pain in the rump to lead. And
Dick, can you tell that story about dedicating a window?
you know, I really didn't want to be an artist because I'd like to have, you know, dental insurance and all those things that normal people can get, house you can buy and stuff like that. And so I didn't want to do it. But I wasn't any good at anything else. And so I started doing it. And my parents didn't think you should be an artist. My dad worked, like I said, in the mills. And so they were both still alive in '89. They both died within a year of each other, '89. So Dad and Mom lived in Everett. Mom's in her rocking chair. Dad's on the sofa next. And he's an old German. And so the first window, the blue window like this, I dedicated to Mom, AW, for AW. And so with all the bevels in it. And so they the port made a poster of it. So it was a poster like this. And so I brought it up to Mom in her rocking chair there, and I said, "Look at this, Mom. A stained glass window at the airport. Look at that. It's even dedicated to you for AW." She says, "Oh, son, that's so nice. Thank you very much." And I said to Dad, "What do you think?" He goes, "Nice you got to hobby." And so he was... He's exactly right. Most of the years, the IRS people would say it was a hobby. So, so it's not an easy road being an artist. And, you know, don't do it unless you have to. And if you really have to, please come in. The water's fine. Any
Another
other
question?
questions? Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for coming out.
The December show will be a travel show. And I'm going to do a show on my recent trip to Madagascar. Joe Tiger is doing a show on the Georgia islands of Falklands. And Ron Pascoe is doing Ethiopia. So that, I believe that's December 16, third Friday. You'll get a notice. There's a sign-up sheet back there. If you're not already on the email list, you can put your email down and I'll add you to the invitations that come each month. So thanks a ton for coming tonight. Thanks. That's it, folks.
It's cold outside.